Welcome back to Daily Driven Alpha. A little bit of an update on the project car. We've finally got some time to start doing some work, and as you can see, the doors have come off and we've started to paint strip them, and you can see that's the door that we're currently working on today, taking sections of it back to bare metal, finding little bits of rust in the typical areas where the screws are, but we'll rust treat those, grind them back as much as we can without compromising the steel. This door we did yesterday and cleaned it up, etch primed it, and this primer is just using to seal the metal back up. We'll actually spray it with an epoxy primer before we paint it, but what it does do is it gives us the opportunity to have a look at it and make sure that we're happy with the surfaces. You can still see a little bit of dirt from some of the work that we've been doing, but in essence the doors themselves are in pretty good condition, and we're quite happy with the way they're coming up. Now, some of the techniques we've used for stripping, some of the areas we used paint stripper on yesterday, and I've got to say, from my perspective, it's chemical, it's wet, it's messy. You have to high pressure hose it off, and today we've just chosen to use a dry process using these tools here, and we're using a 5-inch grinder, and once again we're using an open weave wheel to get into all these areas here, all the surfaces, strips it off pretty quickly. It's a dry process, just takes sweeping or vacuuming up, and then once we get into some of the other areas, we're just using a wire wheel on a drill to get into these areas, clean them up, and then finally a little bit of hand sanding with a wet and dry 180 grit and then a 400. You find what works best for you. And whenever you're doing this, dust mask, God knows what's in some of these paints. Some of the older paints may even have lead base in them, so please protect yourselves. Protect your hearing, and a face mask as well, safety glasses. Whenever I'm using the wire wheel, I wear these underneath the face shield as well. It's called double eye protection, and of course gloves. So you can see fundamentally pretty simple tools. Everybody should have, if you're doing this kind of work, have these tools available to them. If not, get them. Now, the car itself, as you can see, we've got into the door jambs themselves, cleaned that up. We'll get in here and we'll do a little bit more sanding by hand. Everything's come up pretty good, and we've also done the windows themselves. It's come up fairly well. Another job that we've been putting off because we find this sometimes painful, but thankfully on this one you can see you've still got the red oxide underneath. Floor pans are in really good condition, which is really unusual for these little cars, but in Australia where we are, we've got fairly dry conditions. Even though we've got humidity, if the cars have been stored well, you don't have to have rust. Everyone thinks Alpha's rust, but what we've been doing is just using a scraper. You can use wider scrapers than this. I just used this because it was handy at the time. It's got a bit of a beveled edge, and we've just been getting in and lifting the stuff, and then for some of the areas like this that are left over, if you use a hammer and just whack the back of the scraper a little bit into that, you'll find it'll chip off, and you can see a lot of the debris, etc., from how we've been chipping it off. Didn't take too long, so try that first before you start using any chemical treatments or heat. See if you can get it off cold. Original sound deadening up there looks pretty good. We will take it off though, because we're going to replace all of this with like a Dynamat, a modern sound deadening in there. Right, what have we done so far as the rest of the car? Another job we were putting off for ages. the engine bay. We took that back to bare metal. That was a mission. Once again, open weave discs, a combination of wire wheels, scraping, and then we've etch primed it, sealed it all up. Really nice. Cross member, good condition. One thing that I was really surprised about is the lack of damage on the inside of the tunnel. Normally that's been beaten up, and so that shows me that the engine and gearbox have not been removed from this car, or no one's been playing with it very much. Areas to look for in these cars when you buy them: have a look into these areas here for any deformation or folds in the steel. That will indicate any significant impact that the cars have had. And when we took the battery tray off, lovely. Battery acid had got in here underneath and eaten into the steel. Now for us, luckily, in this section here, we'll cut that out. We'll fabricate a new piece of steel and we'll weld that in. So that's not a major issue. The other thing too is, you can see here that the front of this car here, nice and straight, hasn't been bent. So we like that. So the little step nose gets a little bit of love. Finally getting the body work done on it, and what we'll do is finish these doors today, etch them. In case you're wondering, what are we doing with all the rest of this? Well, this is going to get cleaned up. We'll wash this, degrease it down, and then we'll just scuff it, sand it, or use a Scotch-Brite, an open weave nylon pad, really get into it, give it a good clean. The whole interior of the door will get a clean with soapy water, dried out nicely, and then we will respray this with epoxy primer, and then we'll respray the entire door. So, door's in really good condition. We haven't had any rot really down in where these weep holes are, and the door skins look great. Very minor damage on the outside of the doors. You'll see a little bit of a dent on the body line there, but the door itself is pretty straight, which is great. It means faster work, less filler and less effort. So the eventual owner of this car's going to get themselves a nice little machine once we've finished with it. So we've got the pleasure of working on it at the moment. As you can see, back end, still haven't done anything. But once again, just, you know, this car probably will end up being red. You know, there's white ones out there. I know there's an argument about keep it white, keep it original, but we just don't think white shows the body lines of these cars off as much as some of the other colours, and so as a consequence we will go red. In this area here, if you are doing a colour change on a car and you can see, look at all the white coming through, I'd suggest you get in and get as much of it out as possible and try and get back to the base before you epoxy primer it. Don't be tempted to take the easy way out, just scuff it over and paint over the top. The paint will start lifting after a while, and it'll let the car down. So spend the time, take the effort, and do the hard work. It'll reward you, that's for sure. Roof is going to be another area that we'll need to do some work on. In the primer grey it looks okay at the moment, but underneath it, and I don't know if you can see it in this light here, the primer hides it. There you go, you can just see it there. See these little pitting marks? There's some of that surface rust all over the roof, and what we'll do is we'll then take all this primer back off and go back to bare metal again, even though we rust treated it. And then when we do that, we'll rust treat it again, and we'll glaze this with glazing putty, and we'll fill it in so it's nice and smooth, and then we'll skim coat the entire roof, and that'll bring it back, you know, just as good as it came out of the factory. So Don't be tempted to get onto it with a grinder and try and grind that rust out. You'll end up warping the roof with heat. You've got to be very careful on these cars. The metal is quite thin. And once again, just reminding you, on these doors we use these open weave wheels, and they do generate heat, but the steel here is quite solid and substantial because of all the folds and the nature of the support. So wasn't too worried about the heat. But once you start touching panels like this, be very careful about how much heat you put into them, because you can actually start to make a change to the structure, or if you're leaning into it, you can actually start to push warping or dents into the car. So there you go, there you have it. The project car on its way, getting a bit more love, and we'll keep you updated on what happens next. Probably show you the interior once we strip all the inside out, and you'll see us take all this gunk from the roof lining out, and we'll clean all that up. Okay, so there we have it. Project car update. Been a long time coming, so hope you've enjoyed that. Thanks for watching the channel. If you do like these videos, please like them, subscribe, that helps us move things along, and please share them with other people around the world who may be interested in alphas. Thanks for watching. Cheers.